So Terence Crawford beats Canelo Alvarez via unanimous decision. Two of the scorecards had it 115, 113, and the other had it 116, 112. Me personally, I had it 115, 113 towards Crawford. There was a bit of subjectivity in this fight, but I don't think you could really deny that Crawford won it. I mean, it would have been incredibly generous for them to give it a draw to Canelo. And I think this fight played out a little bit how I expected, but there were a few surprises in there. The first surprise I would say was how well Crawford actually took Canelo's power. Crawford, I thought, would react a lot more when he got hit against Canelo Alvarez. Although, to be fair, Crawford never really got hit too clean in this fight, and he was able to block most of Canelo's shots to the head. Canelo had success to the body, and I'll just go through how I thought the fight was going from the first to about the 12th round. Round one, I actually thought was a good round for Canelo. I gave it to him. I thought he was targeting the body and he was smart to do that. Crawford landed a combination punch, but it wasn't the cleanest. He landed a straight left hand and I think a right hand, but one of those was blocked. And even the one that got through wasn't the cleanest of shots. Canelo was more active in the first round. He was patient. And you could see from round one that Canelo respected Terence Crawford. He wasn't just going to run in on Terence Crawford because he was the smaller man moving up. He was going to give him the respect that Crawford really deserves for the elite fighter that he is. And I gave round one to Canelo Alvarez. Round two, I thought Crawford started to pick it up and he was landing the cleaner punches to the head. Canelo wasn't really landing anything clean to the head. He was mainly landing to the body. The fight was following a pattern where Canelo was the aggressor for the most part. Crawford was on the back foot. There were moments where Canelo did actually have Crawford up on the ropes, even as early as I think the second round, but he wasn't able to get through on Crawford's guard. And even when he was hitting him on the elbows and stuff, it wasn't having the effect that I thought it would have, which was one of the things that surprised me in this fight, as well as Crawford being able to take Canelo's power better than I thought. He was also able to absorb shots to the elbows and the arms a lot better than I actually thought he would. I thought Crawford would actually start to break down and wear down as the fight went on, even with punches that weren't really landing clean because of the force of the shots. When you're fighting a guy who's quite a lot bigger than you and you're not used to it, you start to feel those aches on your elbow and on your shoulders, and that then affects how a fighter approaches the fight. He can do what Jamel Charlo did, but Crawford never did that, and credit to him for that. I mean, it did surprise me. But getting back to how we're seeing it on a round-by-round basis, I thought the first 6 rounds were even-ish. They were going back and forth. But I think the pivotal round in this fight, for me, was round 6. Because the first 4 were nip and tuck. There was no real decisive winner in any of those rounds. But I thought that they were 2-2 after 4, and then the 5th round came, and Canelo won that round, and that was the most significant round that anyone would have won up to that point. And normally what happens in boxing, when that happens, the fighter who's won that round normally goes on to win the fight. But this is where you've got to give Crawford credit, and it is a testament to how great he is, and it shows the adjustment he was able to make. Because 9 times out of 10, when you have 4 rounds that are nip and tuck, and then one guy pulls away in the 5th, they generally go on to win the fight. But Crawford, and this is when I knew Crawford really got a chance, was the 6th round. He came out that round and he knew, I cannot let Canelo take the momentum from the 5th round and run away with this fight. I've got to stamp my authority and I've got to change the course of this fight. I've really got to win this round. And that's what makes a great fighter. And another fighter who does something like that is Alexander Usyk. And Usyk did this in the first fight against Tyson Fury when after 6 rounds, even though I had that fight even, the first fight I'm talking about here, the momentum of the fight had gone to Fury. And I was sitting and I thought, you know what? Tyson Fury, he's going to run away with this. But round 7 was so pivotal to Usyk in that fight. And he did exactly what Crawford did in round 6 here. And he didn't let his opponent run away with the momentum. And only a truly great fighter like Crawford and Usyk are able to do stuff like that. And that 6th round was a big round for Crawford. I gave the 7th round was close. I gave it to Crawford. I did think Crawford did enough to win. I think Crawford throughout this fight was landing the cleaner punches to the head. Canelo was making a good effort to go to the body. And I think he did. And I can't remember exactly what round it is. I think there was one point where he actually did hurt Crawford a little bit to the body. Not something that's very easily seen, as in that Crawford didn't really show it, but I could tell, yeah, he's a little bit hurt there to the body, Crawford. And I thought that might be the case because he did get hurt against Jose Benavidez in the body as well. But he was, you know what, he was able to weather that, you know, and he was so focused on his goal that he didn't let those moments that Canelo had, he didn't let Canelo build up with those moments and generate the momentum and then go on to win the fight. Because most people Canelo fights, when he has that round, that breakout round, he goes on to win the fight. And I'll give you an example of that with the Callum Smith fight. Because the Callum Smith fight, there were a few rounds with Canelo and Callum Smith, similar to the first 4 rounds of Canelo Crawford, where it was a little bit nip and tuck. And in the first round, Canelo got the significant round. He literally just ran away with the rest of the fight. He swept all the rest of the rounds after that. And I felt like, oh, after the 5th, that might happen here to Crawford, that Canelo was going to sweep the rest of the fight, just like he did with Callum Smith. And this is what greatness is about. And this is why I think Crawford ultimately proved his greatness in this fight, right? He went in there with a guy where things didn't go all his own way, you know. People might look back and say, oh, well, I think Crawford won the fight, but I don't think it was as one-sided as some people are making it out. That's just me personally. I think he clearly won. Don't get it twisted. I think Crawford clearly won this fight, but I don't think he had it all his own way as much as people are thinking. He had to go through, you know, a little bit of, you could say, adversity to an extent, because the momentum shift that happened in the 5th round. So, yeah, and then I gave the 8th actually to Canelo, to be honest with you. But then the 9th, 10th, those last 4 rounds, I think Crawford really, really won the fight. You know, I do think I gave one of the last 4 to Canelo, and that's how I had it 7-5. So I had it 4-all after 8. And then the last 4, I gave one of the rounds to Canelo, which gave it 7-5 to Crawford. I didn't write down my score. I'm just going off the top of my head from what I remember. I do all of these videos unscripted, so I do tend to forget things. I probably should start making these a lot more scripted, because I think they'll be a lot better that way. But yeah, those were basically my initial thoughts on the fights and my takeaways. Where do I think each fighter goes from here? For Canelo Alvarez, to be honest with you, I believe he's an all-time great when you look at what he's achieved in the sport of boxing. He's world champion in 4 different weight divisions. He was the man at 160. He was the man at 168. And he won world titles at 175 and 154. You know, he was undisputed at 168. And there's a lot of guys that Canelo Alvarez beat that Crawford wouldn't beat. You know, because styles ultimately make fights. I don't think Crawford would beat a 160-pound version of Triple G. Now, you can say, well, that version of Canelo is different to this version of Canelo, and that probably is true, but I don't think that takes away from Crawford's victory either. I think Canelo has cemented his legacy. I think he's an all-time great. I think that he probably should retire. I mean, if he wants to have one more because he doesn't want to go out like that, fair enough. Have that one last sort of swan song fight and call it a day. And he's given us a lot of good fights. I mean, there's great memories from Canelo's career. I mean, Canelo Triple G2 is one of the best middleweight fights I've ever seen. One of the best middleweight championship fights I've ever seen since I've been watching boxing. So we have to give him his just dues. Obviously, people will always bring up the situation about performance enhancing drugs, but many fighters have tested positive for performance enhancing drugs. I mean, Tyson Fury's tested positive, Billy Joe Saunders is tested positive, and the list goes on and on. I mean, even Roy Jones Jr. tested positive, James Toney tested positive, and these are some of my favourite fighters. I mean, we can't, you know, judge a fighter on that when it's so widely used in the sport. I do think that for Crawford, does he have one more? Personally, if I was him, I'd retire. He's done it all. Undisputed in 3 different weight classes. Pretty incredible. Was a champion at 135 and now 168. Got to give him a lot of credit for that. I think, I mean, who does he even fight if he has one more at this point? There's no one out there for him, because where is he going to make the money and where is he going to get the upside in his legacy to really fight again? People were saying Hamza Shiraz. What does Hamza Shiraz really do for Crawford? Unless there's a boatload of money there. I mean, if you're Crawford, you're thinking, why do I fight Shiraz? I mean, you beat Hamza Shiraz. What's everyone going to say, bro? He's not going to add to his legacy. So, yeah, I don't think there's anyone out there at 68 that really adds to his legacy. I mean, could he go to 160 and pick up a title there? Yeah, potentially he could do that, and that would make him a 6-weight world champion. But the issue there is there's no one who's really a name that's going to generate the money or the interest for Saudis and Turkey Al-Sheikh to really make the fight. So, yeah, I think Crawford and both Canelo really should retire. I actually think that both of these guys are now all-time greats. You know, I mean, you can have, just because you lost to an all-time great doesn't mean you're not an all-time great. I mean, Sugar Ray Leonard lost to Duran. Duran moved up 2 weight classes and beat Sugar Ray Leonard. Both of them are all-time greats. You know? I mean, Sugar Ray Leonard himself moved up basically a weight class, or maybe even some would say about 2 weight classes, because he was really a welterweight, and beat Marvin Hagler. And yet both of them are all-time greats. You see? So it is part of what happens in boxing when you fight another truly great fighter. You sometimes, get beaten by a smaller man. We've seen it with, Tyson Fury. Tyson Fury is still an incredible fighter. Just because he lost to Usyk doesn't mean he's not a good fighter. And I just think that whole narrative ruins boxing, because it prevents fighters from taking the biggest fights out there. But yeah, those were all of my thoughts. Congratulations to Terence Crawford. Great to see a guy who, really, another point on Terence Crawford is it's a stroke of luck that he was even discovered. It's pretty incredible that one of the greatest fighters ever, and that's what Terence Crawford is right now. I mean, if you want to sit there, before this fight, you could have debated it. You could have said, yeah, well, Sean Porter, and he beat, Errol Spence coming off a car crash. Who did he really beat at 140? But now that's all ended. That's all gone. We can't do that anymore. He's a 5-weight world champion, undisputed in 3 of them. Floyd Mayweather was never undisputed in 1. And, we all call him an all-time great. And he didn't fight Canelo at 151 pounds or whatever that catch weight was. A green Canelo Alvarez. He fought him at 168 pounds. No rehydration clause. When Canelo was an undisputed champion. Right? So he is one of the greatest fighters ever, Terence Crawford. And getting back to what the point I was trying to make before I went off on this tangent. Crawford nearly never got discovered, which is crazy. You know, if you think about it, if Tim Bradley never sparred Crawford, he would have never got signed to Top Rank, and none of this would have ever happened. So one of the greatest fighters ever would have never been discovered if, you know, he wasn't used as a sparring partner for Timothy Bradley, who then went and said to Top Rank, we've got to sign this guy. He's a future great or Hall of Famer fighter. You know, I just find that crazy. Like, you would have thought some big promoter would have snapped Crawford up in the amateurs, and he was pro at the time, so he had quite a few fights. But no one really thought he was going to go on to really do much. So it's a very different story to many of the other all-time greats that have come along. Like, even Floyd, he's become this massive celebrity. Even now, Crawford isn't really a celebrity. He's just still that kid from Omaha. Like, he just has that sort of he has that sort of thing that every fighter almost has at the start before they blow up and become like superstars. It never really happened with Terence Crawford. You know, even now I feel like Terence Crawford isn't a household name in America. I mean, maybe things will change now he's fought on Netflix, but it is one of the tragedies that Terence Crawford never became a superstar. And I remember Eddie Hearn talking about it. So it's great he was able to become the undisputed champion of the world and get the respect that he deserves, because he's an incredible fighter. I'll probably put out a few other videos about this. This was just me ruffling off the top of my head, just thoughts that come in. But yeah, feel free to like this video, comment, subscribe. I'm a pretty small channel at the moment. I'm trying to grow it a bit more so I can just share my thoughts with other boxing fans out there.